Are you curious about bodies, pleasure, and possibilities? And what about curious about what others are up to on the planet when it comes to pleasure, sex, and play? Have you considered what pleasure can do for your life, your body, and your bank account? Do you know something magical, delightful, and out of this world orgasmic is not only possible for you, but totally available to you? If you're ready to be the magical, sexual, sexy beast you know you can be, and you just need the tools to get there, you're in the right place. Now, here's the host of The Pleasure Zone, sensual movement artist, relationship and sex alchemist, Milica Jelenic.
Welcome, my sweet pleasure seekers. I love having conversations on this show all about sex and pleasure and all things to do with, the history, the mystery, the biology, the physiology, the psychology, and all things to do with sex and pleasure. And I also love to talk about relationships. And one of the things that I notice time and again is that there are tips and tools for neurodivergent people to go out there and try to fit into this neurotypical standard on the planet. And I'm thinking, let's flip that around. I would love to see and hear. So this is kind of like advice that I have actually heard people tell neurodiverse people about how you can have a better relationship, how you can have a relationship, how to socialize, how to do all these other things, how to be a better listener, blah, blah, blah. But I'm going to take that advice and tell it to neurotypicals and see how ludicrous it sounds. So I don't know. My own brain, this is hilarious because I'm pretty sure I'm neurodiverse. It's probably why when I was like 8 or 9 years old, I was tested for IQ in school. There was a special test. I ended up in these special classes for enrichment classes. Later to find out that they were like vetting us at a really young age for specific careers, but I didn't know that. But that's a story for another day. I only realized that recently when I was listening to someone who was talking about the research that they were, I suppose, conducting on us enrichment kids, that looking back, it makes sense that's what was happening. I guess there were reports written on it. I have no idea. Were you an enrichment kid too? If you were an enrichment kid in the 1980s, I'd love to hear your comments in the chat about what did you do in enrichment classes, because we got to leave our regular school classes and go to enrichment classes where we had so much fun solving conundrums and doing other weird things and going to the science center all the time, where we got all our work done in class, so we were probably bored, and so they sent us off to go be nerds together. So probably I'm neurodivergent. But at the time, that wasn't terminology that was being used necessarily. And because I was probably also really good at masking a lot of things, or not just masking different tics, I was probably also just really good at masking in general to fit in. So that in itself explains probably also why I was very tired and exhausted and crabby when I would get home from school. So that, and being highly empathic, that'll do that too. So what are we talking about today? Well, we're going to talk about my special interests. So for those of you, my neurodiverse friends out there, I'm sure you all have some special interests. And if you are listening to this show, your special interest might actually have to do with sex and pleasure. And you might have seen the title and went, haha, now that's weird and funny. Or you might have read the title and thought I was specifically just going to talk about how neurotypical people can have a better dating life. No, this is actually to show neurotypical people how bizarre it is to be told that you need to change in order to accommodate the situation that you're in, situation we'll call it, the way that you be, that you need to change that so that you can have better relationships, typical relationships. And I know personally from experience that my best relationships were with neurodivergent people. We just understood each other better. So And and it's kind of funny because I read some research, which was probably done by somebody neurotypical, that probably, but maybe not, because a lot of the sciences have lots of neurodiverse people who get really specifically interested in studying certain things. But this, I don't know if this was an actual study or this was just something that somebody made up and reported. They discussed different ways if you were in a neurodivergent relationship with somebody else who's also neurodivergent, that you might have a lot more misunderstandings or not understanding each other's cues. And I have to say that I don't know that that is consistently true. However, I think there's just a different way of navigating it. So let's be really clear. One operating system is neither better nor worse than the other. And what do I mean by the operating system? So there's a great comedian, she's from England, and she refers to neurodiversity in being neurotypical. She's neurodiverse and being in the, variations thereof as being different operating systems, like comparing, your Apple, any kind of Apple products to um, you know, any Android product. So it's a funny thing. It's just a different operating system. Doesn't make one better, just makes them different. So if we're looking at these systems as being different systems, how easy is it for you to go from one system to another? It takes some navigating, some learning, some adjusting. And if you are neurodivergent and you have your whole life like wondered why relationships are so strange or awkward. And I've had this conversation with my mom, so I know this goes on. My mom is neurodiverse, and I'm not going to name all the labels she has, but she, I remember having so many conversations with her about relationships, and she would evaluate them kind of in a logical manner of this is what you're supposed to do from observing other people and what they do and seeing and kind of observing their level of happiness. Like, oh, these people have a certain level of happiness in their relationship or perceived happiness, and they do A, B, C, and D. Okay, so if I do A, B, C, and D in a relationship, this should work. Well, the thing that she hadn't considered is that they are different personalities than probably the people she was dating, and she's a different personality than the also than the people she was observing. So, method was interesting and scientific for sure. Observation, testing. Her testing didn't turn out so great, so she couldn't replicate her different scientific methods there on proving how relationships work. And they still to this day mystify her. She's 70, going to be 76 soon. And she's still mystified by relationships and how people do them and why would they want them. And frankly, she had children because it seemed to be what was supposed to happen, not that she had a deep longing from childhood to have children or something like that. And, all of her qualities really made it it made it tricky for her to actually be able to be in relationship with people if they weren't able to be both smart enough, that was definitely key, funny enough, or entertaining, I guess, in general enough to keep her attention. So, so a little ADHD, a little of this, a little of that mixed in. And not that she was never diagnosed with ADHD. I'm just calling it out on her. And it's fun to kind of observe that in her. And it's fun to observe how I then did similar things where I could watch friends in relationships or watch older people having relationships and thinking, okay, this is how it's done. Like you go on a date, like the movies say, you go on a date and then you're supposed to kiss the person, whether you feel like it or not. That's part of the equation because that's what the movies tell you and that's what TV tells you. So you establish that this is how it goes. So, you know, when you're not really sure how relationships work, sometimes you will observe and see what works and what doesn't work. And then sometimes you become your own test subject where you are observing your own self in the relationship and seeing what works and doesn't work while you're in it or watching it. It gets so complex and interesting. So how do we invite neurotypicals to be a little bit more neurodiverse instead of the other way around? Because I've seen lots of things where, and there's actually a show on Netflix about dating for neurodiverse people. It's like they follow a bunch of people through their dates and things, and all the things that come up, and learning how to socialize and learning how to ask questions and be interested. And what I find most fascinating about the particular show, which off the top of my head, I can't remember the name of it, but in the series, and I think there's 2 seasons of it, there are several times where the neurodiverse people have, you can watch it and you can see that there's so many times where it's one of the people gets like feeling uncomfortable when they're out on a date and they'll just say, okay, I'm not comfortable, I'm leaving. The frankness is really there. Now, in a neurotypical situation, that wouldn't be considered good etiquette to just get up and run away. However, in a neurodiverse situation, you might find that it's like, okay, that's what you need to do right now. I say that because not only does situations like that happen in the show where somebody might just get up, go to the bathroom and not come back, or they come back and they say, I need to leave. That actually has happened in my life. One of the first guys I ever dated, definitely neurodiverse. If you're out there, you probably know who you are once I tell the story. But maybe you don't even remember it because it's just your way of being, which is so cute. So taking it back a few decades here, I was on a date. I think we were having hot chocolate, and it was around December, probably. It was cold outside. We're having hot chocolate in Canada, and out of nowhere, the guy I'm with just gets up and runs down the street and runs and is gone for anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes. And I'm just sitting there wondering, okay, what's happening? But before he did get just up and run, he said, I gotta run. And so he just got up and ran. I didn't really know when he was coming back or if he was coming back. So I waited 10 or 20 minutes or so. And then when he came back, he said, I just need to get out of here. And I was like, well, do I go with you or do you stay? So neurotypicals would assume that they're going with the person generally. And neurodiverse people need more information. Like, am I supposed to come with you? Are you inviting me to come with you, or should I stay here? And those kinds of questions are really helpful. Very specific questions can be very helpful when you're not sure if you're supposed to be tagging along, if you're invited, if you're part of it. Also requiring more information, like, are we dating? I remember asking that several times, like, are you my boyfriend or are we dating? Like, I don't know what qualifies this. And I'm not sure if neurotypicals need that. So shout out to neurotypicals. Do you need actually to know if somebody is dating you, or is it assumed and presumed that you've gone out a couple times and then you're officially dating? Because I think I would need more information. Like, I need to know what qualifies that. So just curious. But in that scenario, let's take that scenario and dive in a bit. Like, somebody just gets up and runs away. What would you do? If you're neurotypical, what would you do? Would you be upset that the person had such bad, quote, bad etiquette, which wasn't bad etiquette to me, such bad etiquette that they just got up, said they had to run and ran away, and you didn't know when they were coming back or not, and you were maybe baffled by it? I don't know if you'd be baffled by it. Would you? Or would you just get up and leave and not wait for the person? Like, did you have very little patience for them processing whatever they were processing through the run or letting go of, or whatever was or the nervousness or whatever was going on? Did you have patience for that? Because there's one thing that happens quite often in relationships where one person is neurodiverse and one person is neurotypical, is that the neurodiverse person needs you to have patience, sometimes for being able to explain things in detail, sometimes for rants about special interests, sometimes because there are no words to explain how you feel and what's going on. So there's just a pause or an I don't know or I'm fine, because you're trying to give an answer that a neurotypical person can receive. So that you can actually take your time to go figure out what you actually feel, if there's any words for it, or maybe it just fades away. So how would you feel, neurotypicals, if you could actually give that patience, you know? So one of the challenges I put out to you guys is to learn patience so that you can date us amazing neurodiverse people out in the world. Or maybe you don't want to, and that's fine too. There's lots of neurodiverse people who do spankingly well with other neurodiverse people. So, but if you happen to be in a relationship and you're wondering if your partner is neurodiverse or neurotypical, and like, why do you have these misunderstandings, or why is there an energy of never feeling like the person has patience or time for you? Maybe you're neurodiverse, maybe they are neurotypical, maybe they're demanding information that you don't have yet because you need to process. Your processing system and your operating system are very different. Ooh, we're going to head to our first commercial break because I just went on a rant. You're listening to The Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network, and we'll be right back after this commercial.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for The Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email become a host at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is The Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@milicajelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet pleasure seekers. Are you somebody who totally seeks pleasure and fun and joy and looking for all kinds of interesting information on that? Like, hey, where was the first dildo ever found in, I don't know, when they were doing archaeological excavations? Where maybe, like, what is the first evidence of humans recording sexuality and pleasures and, recording how to have it? Like, where did all that stuff start? Well, all of that and way more is found on the Pleasure Zone, which you can find on well over 80 different platforms for podcasting. So if you love, maybe you're listening right now on Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, maybe you're listening on Apple Podcasts, or maybe you're listening on the Inspired Choices Network app, which we have, and you can get for free. You can download the Inspired Choices Network app, and you can hang out with me whenever you want and get all, I think it's over 500 episodes now. It's been 10 years, guys. It's been a bit of episodes. So yeah, although I missed a few weeks, that's why I know it's not exactly 520 episodes. So it's a little less than 500, I think. So I want to get really clear on like what is neurotypical, what is neurodiverse, because these may be words you haven't heard, and sometimes the new or more accurate words have come up over time. So, maybe 10 years ago, we would refer to this as, instead of neurotypical, it was atypical. Instead of neurodiverse, it was atypical. And then there was typical and atypical. And now there's neurotypical and neurodiverse. So one of the things that are some characteristics first, if you're neurotypical, to know that you probably have easy conversation with people. You know how to do small talk. That's something that a lot of neurodiverse people don't know how to do. Not that they don't know how to do it, it's boring AF. It's not fun, so why bother? Like, how was your day? My day was fantastic. What did you do? How is the weather? And I can sometimes tell when I'm on conversations with people whether they are, neurodiverse or neurotypical just by the way they'll start conversations. And sometimes you can tell when somebody's masking because they do certain things by rote. Like they'll ask maybe the same 3 questions right off the bat, but they don't wait for your answer because it's like they have it memorized. How are you doing? What did you do today? And is there anything new? So my dad does this all the time, and he's always done this like my whole life. He needs to get his questions out. He doesn't necessarily wait for the answers, and that's it. Like he needs to get his bit out to say that he has done the socializing, and then he can go so deep, so fast, and he can talk about anything, especially historical, and he can go into that and go on a rant forever and a day. So, although I would say both my parents are neurodiverse, they also didn't have navigating skills on how to communicate, also language barrier, also cultural barriers, also personality barriers. So no special interests in common. That didn't really help either. So for the neurotypicals out there, who you have no problem having a conversation, I dare you guys to go, instead of having a conversation about, hey, how are you? How's the weather on your end? What are you up to these days? I dare you to dive deep right off. And I've got friends who are totally open to letting me do this to them, do it to them. It sounds like I'm like harming them or something, but they know, and I can just dive deep and say, let's cut the small talk and okay, what is really deeply bothering you right now? Like what's going on? And they are so good with going, okay, good. I don't have to pause. I don't have to try and make small talk. I can just get on and feel my feels and get it out and not worry about trying to be neurotypical. So I dare you neurotypicals to dive deep. Not be afraid to dive deep. So teaching you guys how to date like you are like you're neurodiverse. And so if you're willing to do that, you'd be amazed at how much information you can find out in a person. And this dating tactic goes against most of what people tell you to do when you're dating. They're like, leave it to the 4th date until you ask if somebody wants to have children. I say, heck no. On the first date, my husband and I, not only did we talk about, do you want children? Do you want to be married? What do you want to do? What are your favorite sex positions? What's your, all of that. I knew him though previously because he was working on my house at the time. So I knew what kind of music he listened to. So we had that in common. I had a good starting ground and just took a while to get us going in dating. But having a good starting ground of something that is in common is really helpful. So if you're neurotypical, you need to find a commonality and dive deep on that commonality with somebody who's neurodiverse so that they can actually enjoy your company and not be bored. So this is how to keep the attention of somebody who's neurodiverse and neurodivergent, and that they will be interested in you. And it might take you a lot of effort to do that, but this is going to be you figuring out exactly what all of us have been going through forever, having to, listen to small talk and all that jazz. You get to go in, find the commonality, and dive so deep that you have now read at least 25 books on the topic. You can memorize especially at least 5 to 10 facts that are interesting. And maybe even by the end of it, go somewhere that is dedicated to the special interest, because that's even more fun. And really, really actually be, this is going to sound insulting to the neurotypicals, but be more interesting. Just be more interesting. So your operating system is different, but if you actually find something that you thoroughly enjoy and you like enough that you could dive deep and become interesting with it and about it, you'll be, not only will you probably enjoy your life more, you'll be more enjoyable to be around, and you'll be able to find people that you have things in common with. What a great way to open up your world, diversify your world, and, have less people that you have to have the small talk with. So you can just be, stepping into some of the qualities that neurodiverse people have. I know that it's more fun probably for you to do the, all of the chitter chatter about everyday things that can be a bit boring for people. But you know what? Just you're going to get used to having deeper, more interesting conversations about things that matter to the neurodiverse people in your life. Isn't that great? It's going to be great for you. So I may be edging on sarcasm. I might be, I might not be. You can decide. This is both for humor, if you're not laughing, in case you're like, oh my, she's getting rude. And there's also like quite an edge of truth about it being very, I would say, frustrating and annoying about how many ways I've seen neurodiverse people being told how they should act in order to date. You need to be able to have a conversation. You need to look people in the eye. Well, what if you don't? What if you don't want to? It's okay. So you know what, neurotypicals, instead of staring somebody down and having them feel uncomfortable by looking at them directly in their eyes, what if you didn't? What if you got in a conversation and you both went back to back and one person stared at the wall and the other person stared at the wall, so you can look wherever you want, so that you as a neurotypical won't be offended by, the person who's neurodiverse, their eyes may be moving around while they're thinking, or their eyes, wandering off and thinking about 5 other things that could be connected to what you're talking about. And when they jump in, when your neurodiverse friend jumps in, be excited that they have something to share with you, because it's all about figuring out how they can relate to your world. So be excited instead of asking them to stop. I have to finish my sentence. Well, by then, they're not included in the conversation anymore. So just letting you know that. And if you've ever been in a car load of people, or in a conference of people who are neurodiverse, it is probably one of the most fun and hilarious things to ever do. Every week, pretty much every week, I drive a group of teenagers ages like 16 to 19 to a group. and they're all neurodiverse. And our conversations could start off with, hey, what's that smell you've got on your body today? That's interesting. And they'll be like, hey, yeah, I did this today, and that's why I smell like this. Hey, that reminds me of the time when I was 3 and my Uncle Ed came over and he smelled like that. And then the next person will be like, oh, yeah, I used to have an Uncle Ed and he actually owned a boat. And the next person will be like, oh, yeah, I was on a boat once and that boat had a sail. And like the conversation goes everywhere and everybody gets it and they all relate. For neurotypical people, that drives them crazy. But neurotypicals follow the wild ride. It is like surfing some of the best waves you can ever surf. So if you are having the luxury of being in a conversation with somebody who's neurodivergent and you're neurotypical, ride that wave, because you could be riding a super fun conversation. You don't know where it's going. Hold on tight, buckaroo. It's going to be a-okay. And if you've noticed that most conversations that I ever have on this show with myself, while I'm talking to all you guys, or if I'm having a conversation even with another guest, like a guest, you might notice that if the other person is like veering off into 25 directions with me and that conversation is running smooth, they're generally neurodivergent or they're riding the wave. I often give them fair warning that being on my show is like riding the big kahuna. You got to just hold on tight and ride that puppy and hope you don't fall off, but see what you can do and have fun the whole time. So ride that big kahuna and see where those conversations go. Allow the person to be themselves and for you to enjoy it. And so you ride that wave with them and see where it goes, because you know what it could do? Open up your creativity. Neurotypicals, your brains might like go in 35 directions because you know what? You're following the wild ride of neurodivergent brains. So have fun is what you need to do instead of trying to redirect and control. Don't redirect and control. Ride that wave. Have fun with it. We're going to head out to our second commercial, because why not? Because we can. You're listening to The Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network, and we'll be right back after this commercial.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for The Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Interested in masturbating for money, copulating for consciousness, and pleasuring on purpose? 21 Days of Sexual Magicism with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic is an exploration of tools, processes, and actions that you can use to create more for your life, your body, your money inflows, and so much more. Graduated learning for all levels of interest. Learn at your own pace via video classes or join the yearly live class. Take a peek at www.milicajelenic.com.
How wonderful would it be to carry your favorite Inspired Choices Network host with you throughout your day? Well, now you can. Inspired Choices Network now has its very own mobile app. Our free app offers live streaming shows, along with thousands of podcasts and TV episodes. Our shows cover a wide variety of topics. Whether you're waking up with us, carrying us through the day, and taking us to bed with you, we're always here for you to enjoy. We're easy to find. Just search for Inspired Choices Network in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store.
This is the Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@milicajelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet pleasure seekers. The fun things to talk about, all about, teaching the neurotypicals how to just step into a little bit more of the qualities that neurodivergent people have. So one of the things that, looking back at my life, I was the kid who would just walk up to somebody. Well, I think I even did it when I was littler. We'll get into that another day, but I'm pretty sure I did it. Yeah, I did it when I was about 4 or 5. There was a boy in class, Davy Hill, if you're out there, Davy Hill from Dunville. I'm just gonna bring that up. You probably don't remember me, but hey, we went to nursery school together. And why do I remember that? Because my brain's crazy. So in nursery school, we had this like rocking chair thing. It was kind of like a boat. And I was sitting on it one day, rocking my heart out because I loved the rocking sensation. Because, who doesn't love a rocking sensation? In fact, I'm rocking right now while I'm recording this because I love being able to rock when I talk. And the energy moves better and I move better and my body's happier. Anyway, back to the story. Nursery school. Age 4, Davy Hill turned 5. It was his birthday, in fact. I remember because we had a cake. And Davy Hill walked right up to me and planted one on my face. And that was my first kiss. And I was like, yep, that makes sense. And my dad turned that into, I was so excited. I was like, I got kissed. Woohoo. I didn't know what the heck that meant. But according to the rest of society, that meant that I should never touch a boy till I'm 19 because I was going to get pregnant. Now, looking back on that, that was some super misinformation on my dad's part. Certainly couldn't get pregnant when I was 5 years old, and certainly couldn't get pregnant from kissing. You can imagine my confusion. Anyhow, don't blame me, Dad. You freaked out. Super cute, so I can understand that you might be concerned. I get it because later on, going on as a teenager, I really just thought that that's what you did. I thought you just go, you know what? I want to date you. Well, what do you think? Or it's like, let me tell you how I'm dating you because this is what I've seen in TV shows, is that on TV shows, what they do is if they're interested, they just kiss you. I didn't really know about the whole, asking permission or having any of that going on. Like, are you comfortable with this? Is this? No. We didn't have any of that etiquette. So I just planted it on, I don't know, several dudes in high school. And if any of you were uncomfortable with that, I am so sorry. But I also take it that probably at least maybe all of you in high school, yeah, you were probably all neurodiverse. So, you're all, yeah, I think so. I got to really think about that. But I was probably most comfortable with somebody who had special interests and who could talk about a specific something for hours because I didn't really know how to talk about myself. And that's one of the things that, you sometimes find with people who are neurodivergent is they really like to talk about their special interests more than they'll talk about themselves, where neurotypicals will talk about themselves. They will have conversations about all things that are mundane and have, a pretty easy time socializing with peers as well. So if you're noticing that, if you're like, hey, I'm probably neurotypical, but I really think that neurodiverse people are way more interesting, which is true. You might want to just find that not only that special interest, but be able to dive deep, be able to have connection conversations that sometimes if you notice the other person is like if you're neurotypical and you're having a date with somebody who's neurodiverse and they are on a streak about the thing they love, then you either can add to that commentary by tapping into something that, so what you look for is you look for things that you know about, right? So I kind of mentioned in the car is like, oh yeah, I smell like this. And oh yeah, that reminds me of this situation and all the things that pop up to remind you now. This is actually a skill that they're now teaching kids in school when they read stories and they need to relate it to other things in their lives. You know who does this automatically? Neurodiverse kids. Their first thing would be like, I read a story about a dog. And the story might not even be about the dog, really. The author probably might have been writing a story maybe about war. But what you'll connect with is there was a dog in a certain scene that reminded you of a puppy that lives down the road. Now that is how we create connections. So teachers out there, if you've got kids in school who are creating connections that are far beyond your comprehension, just know they have different operating systems and the connections they are creating are 100% valid and accurate because it's relating to something they personally experienced or have observed on the planet. So it's, I think, a really fun way to learn about people is through random conversations about special interests. You'll find that you learn so much not only about the person, because often there's no filter with neurodiverse people because they're just going to say how they feel and what they want. And it's not about offending you, it's just like, this is how I feel. Where neurotypical people can often feel offended by that. So, neurotypicals, get over it. Stop taking it personal. You're not generally that important. I know that sounds terrible. OMG. I'm probably insulting the neurotypicals out there, and I'm sure I'm going to get backlash. Oh well. It's that it just gets so boring to hear about how, if you're neurodiverse, you got to change to make neurotypicals feel more comfortable. But guess what? We've all been doing that forever. The masking is exhausting. It's time for you guys to learn to step into your creativity. All you neurotypicals can step into your creative selves, get a little bit more fun, a little bit more interesting. Rock on the chair with us. Get on that little rocking horse, like I was talking about. Sit on that rocking horse and just say what it is. Say what's going on in your heart right then and there. It can get so fun. And a lot of times people are like, hey, you're not very grounded or rooted, but actually you're so, so rooted in the moment that you can ride that wave. So I find it annoying, I'd have to say, when people are like, get grounded, you're not here, you're traveling. Oh, I'm both here and traveling because I can do that. And I'm here with you, but if that conversation is boring, I am here and there at the same time. But if you're talking about something deep and important in your heart, I'm so there with you because I'm more interested in your intensity of being and what is important to you than if you're talking to me about something that you could care less about. So I'm sure isn't that true for everyone? Maybe it's not. Maybe people actually enjoy listening to stories that people don't give a poop about. But I don't think that's true because I'm seeing more of a trend even in advertising where the story matters and telling your story matters and connecting with that matters. And I think it's also because although they only say that 20% of people are neurodiverse, I think that's only 20% that has actually gone and gotten diagnosis. The rest of us who just feel that's true, who never got diagnosed, well, maybe I did, right? I don't actually know what happened there in grade 3 or 4 when I ended up in enrichment. I think there may have been there was a lot of evaluations and a lot of things going on. So I could have been, and I was just never told what that was. Or maybe I never was and I was just put into enrichment. So yay, whatever that was. We had a particularly odd number of kids in that school who were neurodiverse, and they were definitely the ones I was the best friends with. And none of us knew how to socialize. So, and actually, even in kindergarten, my very first two friends, I had no idea how to socialize. And I'd seen other kids like go to birthday parties and know what to do when they get there. And I was always that kid who kind of stood outside by the door and watched kids and had no idea. And I remember going to being invited to birthday parties because like the whole class would be invited, but I didn't even realize what I was doing there. There's one birthday party that I particularly remember stepping in somebody's mac and cheese on the floor because it was the first time I'd ever had mac and cheese, and that my sock was covered in mac and cheese had me so flipped out. I didn't like the feeling of it. It was definitely a sensory issue for me. And there was so many people there that I didn't feel like I don't think I knew them. I don't even know why I was at this party, but I remember walking through the door and I remember stepping in that mac and cheese. But for the rest of it, I don't know what I was doing there. I don't even think I talked to anybody. I don't even know what was going on because I not only did I not know how to socialize, I didn't know I didn't know what was making me so uncomfortable, which was probably the cheese on my sock because I remember taking it off and then being told I had to put it back on because it was cold outside. And then I was like, I can't put this on and put this in my shoe. There's mac and cheese on it. Ugh, gross. Okay, that was a total sideline, but that's just to let you know that, you know, a lot of these qualities come from your childhood. Like you'll probably look back and realize you've had a lot of these qualities if you're neurodiverse and you're like, wow, I've always had these qualities, but maybe I never really dove into that. And so for neurotypicals, be a little bit more understanding and a little less critical when there's things like sensory issues going on. Like if you could imagine that sometimes sensory issues are as bad as like feeling like a million people are yelling in your head, but there's no sound going on. There can be even things like pitches or noises that are like electrical and you can hear them. There can be loud noises. There can be, smells. There can be all kinds of things to do with your senses that are just like over the top, whether there's temperature changes or textural changes. For me, clothes and the tightness of things can really get me. So for neurotypicals, you know what? Be a little bit more understanding. Just allow yourself to know that if you were under a stressful situation like nonstop bombardment of noise, although, maybe it doesn't bother you because apparently there are no sensory issues when you're neurotypical. And I can't even imagine what that's like. But um, kudos to you if you experience that, but you might have to put yourself almost in a torture situation to fully grasp and understand what it feels like. And like constantly being, maybe like the torture of the water drop on the forehead, maybe then it might kick in for you to understand what that's like. And, you know, also, if you are neurotypical, dating somebody who's neurodiverse, if you can be sure to have some things that are, I don't know, mm, things you can count on, right? So if it's like every Tuesday we go to this specific place, cool. And if you need to know that that's not happening, you need like at least 24 hours notice that it's not happening. If any of you have ever watched Big Bang Theory, it's essentially like if you were actually any number of them are neurodiverse, but Sheldon is the character that they characterize as neurodiverse the most. Um, just keep that in mind. It's like dating Sheldon and, needing to have certain things because changes can be a little bit scary. Unless you're the one that is creating the change, then it's sometimes easier to ride that wave because conversations can change on the fly. I That is actually something I can do pretty well. I somewhere in my life was able to let go of um plans changing, but when I was little, no, I wasn't. And not only did I make plans, I assumed everybody else knew about my plans and were supposed to know just psychically. And when they didn't, I was so confused that they didn't know that, I'm supposed to go do this today. And they're, told that no, that was never agreed on. I was like, but it's a particular day. This is what's supposed to happen. Those things can be really, really frustrating. So be reliable. Is what I'm saying. Be reliable for your neurodivergent people, and then they will be able to trust you more. Because if you're not reliable and you change things and you're noisy or obnoxious, or you're just, doing things that would overstimulate somebody who's neurodiverse, way, way more sensitive. You don't require, to do a lot in order to stimulate somebody who's neurodiverse. And also needing to get permission and confirmation that certain things are okay. Like, is it okay if we hold hands? And if they say no, don't take it personally. And also, you know what, neurotypicals, do not push them or guilt them. That is just rude. If somebody who's neurodiverse doesn't come around to you, it's because they're uncomfortable with you. And it may take them a lot longer to come around to you than your typical neurotypical relationships, where, it might be like, 1 or 2 dates and everybody's comfortable. It might take somebody who's neurodiverse months of seeing you repeatedly and seeing that you're reliable in order to trust you. So yeah, just consider that. I kind of kept on talking, so I missed my last break, but that was just like a change up in the system for you guys. So I hope my neurodiverse friends out there are okay with that. We didn't have our last break. I wanted to get as much information shared as possible because I, again, would really love to see, what it's like to walk in somebody else's shoes for a day. Like, if you were overwhelmed by things, if you felt like it was weird to have mundane conversations about daily goings on, if you felt like, typical, I don't even know what that's like, but if you're neurotypical and you really, really wonder why it's so tricky to date somebody who's neurodiverse, just try and walk in their shoes for a day and see what it's like. Put extra noise in your ears to see how it feels to be constantly bombarded by noises that, other people might not even be able to pick up on. Be bold and just say how you feel. I like you. What do you want to do about it? Should we go out for coffee? And then if they say no, they say no. If they say yes, they say yes. So, sometimes having to wait and see if people are comfortable with you can be exhausting, right? My neurodiverse friends, so neurotypicals, just step up to the plate and say what you feel, say how you feel, ask for what you'd like, become interesting by diving into some interesting topics that you can have long conversations about, and even have maybe debates on certain factoids on those things. Even more fun when you can debate facts. And I think one of the things also is to be able to be clear when, instead of being vague with somebody who's neurodiverse, just be clear. Say something like, for example, if you want to go out, just say, would you like to go to the movies on Tuesday at this location for this movie? Yes. If you just say, do you want to go out sometime? They will have no idea what you mean by that because it's too vague. Be less vague, have a little bit more specifics involved. And one of the things too that I talk about with people who already are in relationship, and one of the people is neurodiverse, always give details. It can be so helpful. It can be kind of like having a relationship with somebody who's anxiously attached, where they just need to know details. Like, I will talk to you in 2 hours and 30 minutes.
Thank you for listening to The Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. The Pleasure Zone returns next Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain, and 5 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. We hope you'll join us. Until then, have the best week of your life by choosing to be turned on and tuned in to your body.